through certain probably 1/16th or less than what you're only been getting into. But I've seen sort of, and I've talked to Charlie a little bit about, are there potentially, of the 300 houses, I mean, is it possible to come up and sort of back this up with some literature that says, well, maybe there's 8 to 10 models of these houses. We have the recent book by Stevens, who's constructed in quite detail. He has made quite a bit of assumptions about different categories of house. And it seems to me that that's probably as good as we're going to get for now, unless there's some breakthrough. So you either throw up your hands and say, gee, I can't do this, or you say, well, this is as good as we know at this point in time. And you potentially back up the decision about the house model with the biographical and economic and data that we may be able to derive from other sources of deeds.
A lot of the houses in Stephen's book are later houses,
yes.
And the styles change regionally as well as over time. I mean, you can almost use nothing from this book for the New Netherlands New Amsterdam period.
Now, the only thing that John Stevens' book, and that's the same thing that people are dealing with. We're looking at the architecture of Massachusetts Bay or at the South, is how quickly did things change and why did they change? And of course, for New Netherlands, you have a multitude of possibilities why things changed. I mean, how influential. I mean, did everybody become Dutch? I mean, for my dissertation, I start calling it New Netherlandic because I don't think it is Dutch. And I think these people that came here created their own identity. And once the English kicked them out they didn't kick them out in 1664, but once the English took over in 1664, you still had that core group that Joyce Goodfriend talks about as well, that maintained this New Netherlandic identity. And then what you see with John Stevens' book is that, and what Ruth says as well, I mean, it's not, and it's the same that, the Netherlands is not that big, but you still have, anybody who's gone there, you have different regional types of architecture. And here you're talking about something that's much bigger, but you have, even on Long Island, you have different types of architecture on Long Island that all have a Netherlandic root somewhere. Why, when they changed, who knows? Did they change because there was a Dutch carpenter involved and a German client? Were they changed because the carpenter that they used wasn't as skilled as they hoped, or this was the best that he could do? To get back to another point, from what I found in the contracts, we can make some judgment calls about measurements. I mean, 18 feet seems to have been, which I think is 1.5 rods, seems to have been a popular dimension, at least for the width of the parcel.
Still is.
And then usually some of them are 30 feet deep, but then again for Albany, 16 feet seems to be a more appropriate scale. So then the other thing where they talk about the framing, I can tell you that they use the bend system, but they make very little mention, and I can tell you the 3 different types of windows that they used, and those are all things that there's no doubts about what they did. So that's when Len is working on that, or George is working on that, we're certain about what they did. Now, how they dressed it up, who knows? Once they put up brick walls. But again, there's little bits and pieces of information with the Du Cimetière image of New York. I mean, there's houses on there. How accurate is he remains to be seen. But they have rubble stone side elevations and probably a brick facade. Same goes for the tile house that was also about 1689. I mean, we're talking 30, 40 years after New Amsterdam sort of ceased to exist in name. But you also, and that's where sort of my spiel on the fact that these people created an identity that they defended well into the beginning of the 18th century, that certain things that were not exactly the same as in the Netherlands, that they created here, that you see, that you can find back with the Sturtevant house, where you have a brick facade and you have clapboard siding. I mean, those are all bits and pieces that we can pull in and say, okay, we know this for a fact, and we can use this to recreate what we think was there with a what is it, like a great possibility, 99.9% sure, or so.
A range of optimistic estimates.
Yeah.
Shall we go to something else? There's another construction on Manhattan which is very important. Should talk about is the wall, the building of the wall. Wall Street's going to be involved in this, and you should know where their name comes from and the circumstances and so forth. There have been all kinds of, every time you see it used in an advertisement, it's always a defense against the Indians. And it wasn't against the Indians at all, of course, it's against the New Englanders. And there's quite a bit of information on the construction of Wall Street. The first contract that was not funded because it was too expensive. The Palisades side by side marching across the island. And then the second one where you had the posts 12 feet apart with boards. And this is the one they built. We even have a drawing of the sort of a side view looking at the trench. So you can see where the soldier would stand to shoot over the wall and the ditch below and so forth.
I think this is a wonderful.
That's all in the New Amsterdam. The drawing is in the margin of the page with measurements. So all of this can be, I think it would be interesting. You could do an exhibit showing how they had anticipated it being built, and nobody bid on it. Nobody would come in with a bid. And then they did sort of a downsized version of the wall.
Well, this is interesting. I think you go to the areas where you have the most information. Again, maybe you start with the Strand, and then maybe focus on a physical infrastructure component like the wall. Maybe a dock is another.
Charlie, weren't there blockhouses along the wall at intervals also?
I think at each end, at the ends, but not. I don't think in the middle. I don't remember blockhouses.
I think those things that look like blockhouses, I think they're gates because they correspond with roads. It looks like maybe the road comes up to a point and then it kind of extends outside.
I seem to recall seeing again in old deeds and discussions of boundaries and locations references to blockhouses at certain intervals that were designated points for reference in siting boundaries. This is another case where the deeds, as we know from collegiate church archival work on the block where the Corbin building is, where the deeds are valuable resource, hard information, hard data, points of boundaries and distances, which don't change.
And you have other constructions, of course, on the island, constant repair of the port. They put up a defensive structure along one of the canals to prevent anyone coming from the east to approach the port, and any number of capital constructions made on the island.
Dock, the ferry landing,
The windmill. The windmill's very important.
water pump.
Well, yeah.
And you could see where Brooklyn Bridge is, that's where the ferry went across. And you could, the ferryman had to look across the island at the windmill. When the sails were taken off of the windmill, he stopped sailing. He stopped crossing because he knew there was a storm coming from the west. And if the windmill operator took the cloth off of his blades, he knew not to take any more cattle across. They're always taking cattle back